The Packers are losing their quarterback coach to the Philadelphia Eagles, but as long as Matt LaFleur is calling the plays, there's nothing to worry about when it comes to Jordan Love.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts. You'll find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. The Packers have some new coaches on defense. I want to hit that. There is a great money figure, salary cap dollars for injuries that encapsulates what went wrong in Green Bay and in Arizona last year. I want to get to that as well. But let's start with Sean Mannion, who is now going to be the Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator, going to call plays for Jalen Hurts, for Nick Sirianni, for maybe A.J. Brown, for Devontae Smith, and Saquon Barkley. It was a job that no one wanted, and they had to get their 15th choice, which was Sean Mannion. And so had this been 2 or 3 years ago, I think there would be real questions about the impact it would have on Jordan Love's development. I understand, Bears fans, Vikings fans, Lions fans are always quick to point out he's been in the league since 2020. But this is only 3 years as a starting quarterback. And so, it's not like he's an old player. Had this been year 1 and then year 2 as a starter, had this happened pre-2024, I think it would have been reasonable to say this could have potential detrimental effects on what's going on with Jordan Love's development. Because, it's meaningful jumps that you need to take in those first couple seasons. And then to have someone come in and from whole cloth have to, reset expectations, and then you got to figure things out again. And I understand, so the other coaches are going to stay in place, but there is a special relationship between quarterback and quarterback coach. The thing is, the Packers head coach and play caller is a former quarterback coach. The hay is in the barn when it comes to the quarterback development with Jordan Love. Matt LaFleur already knows what Jordan Love is good at, what Jordan Love is not as good at, what he likes on third down, what footwork he likes in certain situations, what footwork you might need to drill a little bit more in practice because he might get sloppy in certain situations or whatever it is. And so there's nothing here to worry about. Now, there's still a question about who is going to take this job. Nathaniel Hackett was an offensive consultant for the Packers. He is going to go down and join Jeff Hafley's staff, which is interesting because Nathaniel Hackett was not a dedicated coordinator when Jeff Hafley was there. So that just means that Nathaniel Hackett was impactful enough in the building as a guy, as a helper, that Jeff Hafley was like, I need that guy on my staff. That's some brain drain. Now it looks like, at least right now, there aren't going to be other changes. Adam Stenavich has not, as of yet, gotten another coaching opportunity. Although I think someone like if Clint Kubiak looks like he's going to get one of Raiders or Cardinals, same sort of tree. Kubiak is from the literal family tree that taught Matt LaFleur football, Clint Kubiak. And so maybe there's a connection there that's worth, investigating if you're Kubiak, and Adam Stenavich could come for that. But I would assume if you're hiring Clint Kubiak, it's to call plays. So if you're the Packers, you could block him from taking an opportunity like that because it's a lateral move. It doesn't seem like they're going to make any other decisions here. Now, the Packers have in-house candidates, much the same way that they do when they draft. They know who's out the door. They have in-house candidates. Luke Getsy was the quarterback's coach for Aaron Rodgers when Aaron Rodgers was winning MVPs from 2019 to 2021. And it was that work that got him offensive coordinator jobs in the NFL. Now, those offensive coordinator jobs didn't go great, but I will say he didn't have always the best talent to work with either. And so, it's hard for me to blame Luke Getsy for the failings of organizations and the failings of personnel. And so, I have always thought highly of Luke Getsy. He is well thought of in the NFL. I liked that he was a college coach for a while, coached with Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State. And so another really, really bright offensive mind. Is he going to be the guy that offers new ideas to Matt LaFleur? I don't know. That's theoretically Adam Stanovich's job. And one of the reasons why I think replacing Adam Stanovich would be useful to this team is not because I think he's a bad coach. I need to reiterate that once again, but because I just feel like the team needs an invigoration of ideas, and that LaFleur needs someone who is closer to a peer with him than someone who is more of a subordinate, which Stanovich has just always been. Luke Getsy is a more senior guy and is not exactly Tom Clements, but certainly has plenty of experience coaching quarterbacks. And I don't think you miss anything. Now, what you do miss if you're the Packers is someone who, if Adam Stanovich in a year gets a coaching job, could take over as your OC if he doesn't get a play calling opportunity. He did. So when I say there's always this succession plan, you have someone in-house who can step in and do the job. I think Luke Getsy is a very good option to replace Sean Mannion. And I think is a less good option if someone hires Adam Stanovich. That would be a less intriguing option to me moving forward. So you want to backfill your coaching reserves. You have this group that's been together for a while now. Sean Mannion was new to the group. It had been Tom Clements, Luke Getsy, and then Tom Clements. And so, you do have continuity in a way because Luke Getsy is that guy. But you need new young coaches. You need to cycle through those guys. This is a unique staff setup in that it's really all young guys. And none of them are the new young guys. They're all in there between 35 and 45. That's the whole staff on offense is that. And you don't have the grizzled vet offensive line coach, and you don't have the up and coming QC or assistant quarterbacks coach or pass game coordinator where everyone's like, oh yeah, that's the guy. That's the next guy. Now, that kind of was Mannion. This is a even more vertiginous rise than I think the Packers could have predicted. They thought highly of him. But when I look at this offense, in terms of the structure of it, in terms of the viability of it moving forward, the always the complaint is, oh, Jordan Love's footwork. And no one who complains about it, or at least most of the people who complain about it, can't tell me what proper footwork is supposed to look like because they don't know. They just know he throws off his back foot sometimes. He does have some inconsistent footwork, but it works for him and it's mostly fine. I don't think it's a problem. What matters is Matt LaFleur is calling the plays. And since Jordan Love has become the starter, only 6 quarterbacks have a better passing grade according to Pro Football Focus. Your mileage may vary on Pro Football Focus. But a top 8 quarterback in the NFL by their subjective grading system. You don't like the subjectivity. Okay, I get it. Well, since Jordan Love became the starter, only Josh Allen has a better EPA per play than Jordan Love. The second most efficient quarterback in the NFL since he showed up. I think the main driver of that success is Jordan Love. And the second biggest driver of his success is Matt LaFleur. Had this been, again, 3 years ago, maybe you feel differently. It would have been especially precarious, I think, had it been okay, his quarterback's coach in 2019 or 2020 through 2022, and then you change going into 2023 with an unproven guy, for example, that would have been trickier. Luckily, that's not what happened. And the Packers benefited from that. They benefited from the learning curve that Jordan Love had. Now, on the flip side of this is the addition of coaches. The Packers made some additions. Jonathan Gannon did to his staff. We talked a little bit about it yesterday with Coach A. We're going to talk some more about it next on Locked On Packers. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress of guesswork. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. Because I don't know about you, I'm not one of those when it comes to my taxes. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. It is the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. And you know what I'm doing? I'm taking the Seahawks in alt spreads. I'm talking 10 plus. I'm talking 14 plus. I think they are going to put it on the New England Patriots. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because with the Super Bowl, once it happens, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Come be a part of what we're building over in the Everydayer Club with Locked On Packers. Get access to the group chat. We have a blast in the group chat. Plus, you get ad-free episodes of Locked On Packers. You get Locked On Sports Today in there too. LockedOnPackers.supercast.com, or click the link in show notes to get more information or sign up. The Packers are putting together a very impressive defensive staff. And if you weren't sold on the Jonathan Gannon hire, be sold on Bobby Babich and Jonathan Gannon together. Because I was really impressed, and we talked with Coach A about it yesterday, that the Bills were able to be as effective on defense the last two seasons, especially against the pass, without elite talent. Name off the top of your head a Buffalo Bills defensive player. Now name off the top of your head a Buffalo Bills defensive player that would start for the Packers for sure. Like, I think Christian Benford would. I think Matt Milano would. I think Ed Oliver would. That might be the whole list. Think about that. And this was a playoff team. A team with a top 10 defense by some metrics, especially against the pass. They are built to stop the pass. They played a lot of dime. And so this signals to me that Jonathan Gannon is bringing we're going to play light. We're going to play the sub packages. We're going to play more dime. We're going to play more light bodies. We're going to play more three safeties, because that is something that the Buffalo Bills did extremely, extremely well. And remember when we talked about the defensive process and Matt LaFleur finding these coaches that go on to be defensive coordinators, he found the right pool of guys. Well, Bobby Babich was in that pool of guys. Now, look, there are going to be questions about the run defense. I think those are fair. I think that's also a personnel problem with Buffalo. They just weren't good enough and weren't big enough up front to make that work. The Packers kind of have the same problem. This is why defensive line is plan A and plan B to improving this defense in the offseason. I think they can even live with their corners as currently constructed if they find an impactful defensive tackle, because if you can create a little interior pressure and or stop the run effectively from light personnel, then now you've really got something. And I think this is a team that is going to say, we're okay just living with you running it if you want to run it, but we are going to make it a nightmare to throw the ball against. I think that's part of the plan here. Now, what I also was looking at was if Jonathan Gannon could bring Bobby Babich and Nick Rawlis, who is seen as a potential future head coach with him, then we're talking about a defense and a defensive staff that to me would be a clear upgrade over what the team had before. That's not a shot at Jeff Hafley. I just didn't think some of the other players, especially after they lost Campanile, other coaches, were on the level. I think Bobby Babich is better than any of the assistants that the Packers had last year. And then if you add Rollis to that mix as, say, the linebackers coach, now you've really got something. Now they brought in Babich as the pass game coordinator. Could you bring in Rollis as the run game coordinator, for example, and the linebackers coach? He's got a senior title. Him and Babich are kind of on the same level, and you move forward there. Yeah, I think you could. My assumption is that this means Rollis has got other defensive coordinator options and opportunities, but he still could end up in Green Bay. Derek Ainsley is out, leaving because he's basically being replaced by Bobby Babich. Instead of Rollis as the linebackers coach, though, they hired the former Virginia Tech defensive coordinator, San Seifkes. And so I'm sorry if it's Seifkes. I'm not a big West Virginia football fan. But he is someone who is, again, a former defensive coordinator. And so the more you can put together, and this is not a retread, right? Like, this is not someone who's like, oh, they're in their 50s and they're coming back and they're trying to figure this all out. No, these are young, hungry coaches. You now have 3 coaches on your staff, your defensive staff, including a position coach and a sub coordinator, so a passing game coordinator, that were former defensive coordinators. The big job. I will continue to believe and have always believed that there is something to that. I love hiring former head coaches as coordinators because their experience is valuable. Matt LaFleur said as much, that there is something valuable as a head coach to having a coordinator who has been a head coach. And so they don't have an OC who was one, but they do have a DC who was one. He was also a defensive coordinator. And now you add Bobby Babich, who's a defensive coordinator, and another coach, albeit in college, who was a defensive coordinator. That's a lot of pedigree in one staff. And if you're cynical, and maybe you are, the flip side of that would be, well, are there going to be too many cooks? Too many guys going, hey, let's listen to my idea. Or if your idea isn't heard, are you going to pout about it because you're used to being in charge? You're used to being the guy that calls the shots. Now, you hope that part of the deal here is everyone's pulling on the rope in the same direction. They're trying to go win a Super Bowl. They understand what opportunity is in front of them with this defense. Plenty of talent in this defense. Like, these are Tony jobs if you're a defensive coach, because you're going to have Micah Parsons, Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard, Evan Williams, Edrin Cooper, like plenty of talent on this defense to get it worked out. And you have a chance to go win a Super Bowl. You have a chance to burnish your credentials once again, to go win, and then say, hey, I've been part of the Packers. Everyone wants to hire Packers coaches. It's one of the most stable and winning organizations in sports. Of course you want that. And so you would hope that professionalism wins out, to be sure. But we heard in Buffalo, there was backbiting. There was infighting there. Hey, it was this guy's fault. It was this guy's fault. And you hope that Babich didn't absorb that. Now, Bobby Babich is the son of Bob Babich, who coached at East Carolina with our pal coach Jagosinski. He's a Nepo baby, but he's also a very, very highly respected young coach. He is a lifer in football. The guy lives, sleeps, breathes football. And I feel like he's been in big games. He has experience to offer. Jonathan Gannon was in the Super Bowl, in the playoffs. Like, he's called games in those moments. He has experience. You're not just like, hey, I hope he can do it. You bring in Christian Parker, you're hoping. Maybe he can. Maybe he can be great at it. We don't know. The more guys with that sort of experience that you can bring in, I just think that is so valuable for your team. Derek Ainsley was a defensive coordinator in college. So, like, having those guys be position coaches for you, that's so important, because the moment can't be too big. all of a sudden you're down 8 in the fourth quarter. You got to make a stop. Guys can't be, peeing down their legs. They need the time under tension. They need the muscle memory of, hey, I've been here. I know what to do. I'm confident that we can find an answer for this. Or, hey, your memory Rolodex. Like that's one of the reasons why veteran coaches are so useful is, hey, in this exact same situation, I remember when I did blank, or I remember when the other team did blank. So why don't we do Y or whatever, right? That is extremely valuable to your football team. I do think, as we said in the A block, that there is value in having the up and comers, the young guys. But Bobby Babich is still that. Like, it's not like these guys are old. I think in a lot of ways, Jonathan Gannon is still that. So you're bringing in guys. This is like when you bring in a quarterback, like the Malik Willis corollary, the Sam Darnold corollary. You bring in a quarterback that you know is talented, but has not done it at the highest level, believing they have the ability to do it at the highest level. But what they have shown is they can be really good. Sam Darnold won 14 games in Minnesota with that team and played like a top 12 quarterback. Is he a top 12 quarterback? I don't know. I know he's giving plus EV to the Seattle Seahawks right now. They're in the Super Bowl. He's a good enough quarterback to get them to the Super Bowl, and not just as a backpack. Like, he played well. He is one of the drivers of their success, certainly offensively. When you bring in some of these guys that are hungry but experienced, that's what you're getting. It's like the version of Sam Darnold. It's like, this guy could be a head coach. Anthony Campanile, perfect example. This guy could be a head coach in 2 years. But he's got enough experience that we know he's a good coach now. He could be a great coach. And after a couple years in our system, he could be a star. Now, you lose stars, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes guys, they just do it forever. Chris Kosurik as a defensive line coach, he just wants to do that forever. Jeff Stoutland, I'm just going to be the offensive line coach forever. Sometimes you get that. But also, if you have really good coaches, we talked about this with Christian Parker. If you have Christian Parker and he's a rock star for 2 years and gets a head coaching job, you take that every time, because guess what? That 2 years, that's right in your prime window. You get 2 years of rock star coordinating, enough that he's going to get a head coaching job. That's great. Great. Give the 2 years of rock star coordinating, and then the next guy, whoever that is, that's his problem to go match that standard. Now, I saw this infographic, and it is the imperfect encapsulation of why some teams fail and some teams don't. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Packers. If you've ever hired someone who looks good on paper but wasn't quite the right fit, you know how important that fit part is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your list stand out and reach quality candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. That's impressive. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. I saw this graphic from SF Data Niners, and it is the NFL reserve list cap hit. So who was on your injured reserve over the course of the season and at the end of the season? How many dollars? And the reason I think that, you look at some of the metrics out there, it's like adjusted snaps lost. It's adjusting for starters and who's really impacting the game for you. Like if you have a bunch of backups get hurt or guys who play 30% of the time, that's not nearly as impactful as if your starting quarterback gets hurt, right? But that's still not directly accounting for how good the players are. Salary cap dollars is a much better way to me because it's like, okay, here are the players you have entrusted to your team. These are the guys you are relying on. The more dollars you've got sitting on the bench because they can't play because they're hurt, the worse theoretically it is for your team. We've talked a lot about the injuries in Arizona. Who do you think had the most expensive IR PUP NFI list in 2025? It was the Arizona Cardinals by a mile, $142 million on injury reserve. The next closest was the Browns at 113, and the next closest after that was the Jets at a shade under $95 million. We're talking about 50% more than the third most injured team in the NFL. So when you ask, when you do the Brad Pitt and you go, if he's such a good defensive coordinator, why didn't he defensive coordinate good? Why isn't his defense any good? This is the reason. The team, and I know Kyler Murray makes up a big chunk of that when you lose your quarterback for most of the year. That's going to account for a lot of those dollars. But the defense also was just ravaged by injury. You will never guess, but the Packers are fifth on this list. And the 49ers, they were ravaged by injury this year. The Packers actually a shade more in terms of dollars on the injury list than the 49ers. $92.2 million. Only the Cardinals, Browns, Niners, and Chiefs had more dollars lost to injury this season than the Green Bay Packers. Who do you think is at the bottom of this list? I'll give you a hint. They're still playing. Let me just list to you the least expensive reserve list for 2025. The Seahawks only had $8.8 million lost to injury. 8.8. That's not even like, that is not a starter at any position except like running back in terms of what an open market value would be. The healthiest teams win. You need to be healthy. You need to be healthy. Second healthiest. And what's weird about this is the Eagles seem to be healthy every year. They only lost $10.5 million to injury. Third on the list, the Rams, the other team in the NFC Championship game. You know who's after that? The Panthers. Okay. But after that, we skipped one, an important one, the Patriots. So the four teams that lost the least expensive players to injury, the Seahawks, the Eagles, the Rams, the Patriots. 3 of those teams were in the Final Four. The Broncos were 27th in terms of fewest dollars lost to injury. So it was Seahawks, Eagles, Rams, Patriots, Panthers, Broncos. And after that, the Jaguars, who also made a playoff run. Sometimes it really is just that easy. Just stay healthy. If the Packers had Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft, I'm telling you, they'd have a good chance to be playing right now. At the very least, they had a good chance to be playing last weekend. Even with those injuries, they should have beaten the Bears. But with Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft, they could have beaten anyone. They didn't have those guys. And don't forget Zach Tom. It's just how this works. And I would guess, I don't have the data in front of me, but I would guess if you go back and you look at the last 5 years, the teams that won the Super Bowl were bottom 5, I would guess almost every time. It is a war of attrition. You need to have the least attrition. And you need to have the least valuable attrition as well. Until the Packers do, it's going to be tough. And I understand in 2010, they made this miraculous run with all these players on IR. Guess what? Aaron Rodgers played. Clay Matthews played. Charles Woodson played. Greg Jennings played. Their best guys, Nick Collins, played. Look at what happened when Nick Collins was not playing the very next year. They did lose some important guys. But they did not lose the important guys, and that's what you have to have. The Packers lost two of their five most important guys, probably three of their six most if you add Zach Tom. You're not going to win a Super Bowl doing that, regardless of who the coach is. You want to be mad at Matt LaFleur, that's fine. But like, it would have been really, 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 really hard to win the Super Bowl being way more injured than everybody else. Do you know how much more talented you need to be than everyone else to do that? Very. That 2010 Packers team was. That's why they won. And that's why they won 15 games the next year when they were a little more healthy. You got to get healthy. And you got to give Jonathan Gannon some grace for what happened in Arizona, because what a dumpster fire that was last year with injuries. Crazy. Crazy, crazy. All right, back next week. We will have a show Monday, a regular show. We'll have shows all next week. But the show on Monday and Tuesday will be regular Locked On Packers. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from Santa Clara. We will be there on Radio Row. We'll actually be in San Francisco. The game is in Santa Clara. But Radio Row is in San Francisco. God bless. So we'll see you then. And we're going to have a lot more fun again this year. If you want to be an everydayer, if you listen every day or you listen most days, I know people are still finding the show. I love that people are still finding the show. It's so great. I just had someone send me a DM yesterday on Instagram saying, I don't know what took me so long, but I'm so glad I found the show. Hell yeah, I'm glad too. Be an everydayer. Get the show ad-free. Come join our Discord. We're having a blast. LockedOnPackers.supercast.com is the URL. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Follow me on the social medias, all of them. And subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Squad shows are there live twice a week. Otherwise, all these episodes are there. If you want to watch the show, we're there for you so you can stay locked on Packers.